The picture that you see here on this screen is from a peak moment in my chaplaincy residency. I helped bless the first box of vaccine that arrived at my hospital on December 21st, 2020. I felt like I was standing beside the Ark of the Covenant. We were in the middle of the winter COVID surge, and I had been seeing the stress on the faces and held in the bodies of all the people at the hospital who interact with patients or visitors. But that first box of vaccine, when it arrived, it gave me and everyone a massive injection of hope. I wouldn't be one of the first to get the vaccine. It went to the folks in the emergency department and the ICU, but I would get a dose within the month. But that box, even before it was ever opened, it represented the best of humanity to me, a miracle. When it arrived, it was hush hush and kind of a secret op. The plain brown cardboard box was wheeled on a cart into the bowels of the hospital by two security guards, and they took it into the windowless hospital pharmacy. Most all of the pharmacists on duty and some of the hospital executives even, and a group of chaplains all crowded around it. And more than half of the people there, I remember, started weeping, just weeping, ugly crying, but happy crying when the brown box was opened to reveal the white Moderna box inside. We all knew that we were in the presence of something holy. We didn't have long because it needed to be kept super cold, but each of us said a few words over it, and our Catholic priest sprinkled it with holy water. Then the pharmacist put it away, and we went back to the grim business at hand. The business at hand in a hospital during a COVID surge is a little surreal. As you'll hear me say through this talk, though, it's not all bad. You get a chance to see the best in people. Visually, it looks like a cross between that show ER and the movie Apollo 13. I remember the staff chaplains started having talks with us chaplain residents around Thanksgiving, trying to prepare us for what it would look and feel like in the hospital when the daily doubling of the COVID surge really ramped up. I was still awfully startled the day I walked onto the neurology floor where I worked and found that it had become a COVID floor overnight. The nurses that I knew well, they suited up like yellow astronauts to go into the patients' rooms, and they helped each other gown up, and then they would help each other take it all off. It really was a group effort, each and every patient visit. If a nurse in a COVID room needed something, she or he would yell out into the hallway, and a group of other nurses would jump forward, finding the needed equipment and extending it in to the nurse through the tiniest crack in the door. It looked like the pictures that I had seen on the news, but it was more jarring to me because it wasn't some faraway place and these weren't strangers doing this. But I find that the news leaves out a lot of the story. The medical providers and the housekeepers who would go into the patient's rooms, well, they looked like astronauts, but they're angel people. They are love in action. The warmth of spirit in my hospital during the winter COVID surge cut through a lot of my fears. I stopped worrying so much about whether or not my dad would get COVID. I hoped he didn't, but I had a quiet confidence that that experience, while potentially deadly, wouldn't be horrifying and lonely as it had seemed it would be when I would read the news about the COVID surge. I hope that you and your loved ones are vaccinated as the Delta variant begins its march through the South. And I hope the thoughts that I impart to you today about hospitalization during the pandemic are wholly theoretical in your lives, but it can't hurt to be prepared. Most everything I say is generally applicable to any hospital stay anyway. Some of it's pretty granular though, and might bring back some bad memories for you. So I just want to give everyone my permission and blessing in advance. If it doesn't feel right for you this morning to hear this material, please take care of yourself. I love you, and I know that you appreciate me, even if this talk is not right for you right now. I'll begin with the concrete. You need to name a medical power of attorney so that the hospital knows who you want to make decisions for you at times when you cannot make them for yourself. It's a simple form. It requires 2 witnesses, no notary. I'm going to post a link to the form in the chat at the end. Yes, your next of kin is the default to make decisions if you haven't named a medical power of attorney. But for reasons I won't go all into right now, it is much, much better to have thought through who you want to make those decisions and to make them officially your medical power of attorney. The safest place for copies of your signed medical power of attorney form is in your glove compartment and in the glove compartment of your medical power of attorney. My dad was recently hospitalized for low sodium. I am his medical power of attorney. I did not have that form in my car, and he didn't have it in his. He had it in his safety deposit box. Super safe, but not at all helpful. I cannot access his safety deposit box in the emergency department or when we move to the intensive care unit. If, like us, you don't have a completed medical power of attorney at your fingertips when you get to the hospital, put your pride aside and fill out another one as soon as someone asks you about it. We made that mistake because I was so pridefully certain that I had a copy of it. I would have a copy of it. I was sure somewhere at the ready. Yeah, I could never find that. So he was there for about 10 days and we never had the medical power of attorney form. I don't want that to happen to any of you. See the chaplain. I worry a lot about this with our folks, actually. I worry that y'all will turn the chaplain away, especially during a COVID surge when visitors are limited. It really helps to have a chaplain in your corner. Being in the hospital can feel dehumanizing, and chaplains are trained to promote flourishing and to restore dignity and humanity to your situation. We want to see pictures of your family, your grandkids, and your pets. We want to hear about your life outside the hospital, and what makes you unique and what makes you feel whole and joyful. We will read to you until you fall asleep. We'll find you a blanket if your room is cold. We will talk to maintenance if your room is too hot. We will advocate on your behalf in all things. We will remind you that you are not alone. And we will tell you things you might not otherwise know, like how the nurses were talking about how they enjoy your jokes and how they are rooting for you to go home soon. We will affirm and normalize your grumpiness and use it as a springboard for life-giving conversation and human connection. During the winter surge, I visited all the patients I could by phone if they had COVID, and also reached out to their families by phone. But I definitely visited, called patients and their families when their families had called the hospital, had called my spiritual care department, and had requested a chaplain visit for their loved ones. And I especially visited patients who picked up the phone and asked for a chaplain. I encourage you to do those things for yourself or for your loved ones if you find yourself in the hospital. Here's a couple of thoughts about death from a pandemic chaplain. First, Death is more, I don't know, dynamic and amorphous, subjective than I had realized before I started working at the hospital. There are times when medical staff will essentially be asking you to say when your loved one is dead. For example, if a person's heart stops beating and CPR is being done, a doctor may say to the family, "We've been trying to get the heartbeat back for 18 minutes and we have not been successful. Do you want us to continue CPR or are you ready to let him go?" I find that rarely does a medical provider say, "Your loved one died 18 minutes ago when their heart stopped beating. Can we all agree that he is dead?" It's just a little bit vaguer than that. The nicest thing that I think you can do for your family related to your mortality is to assure them that you trust them and that they will know what to do when the moment comes. I encourage you heartily to have open, extensive discussions with your people about your wishes and to create your advance directives. Those are all good things. But it's hard to predict every scenario. Should they try the ventilator in this instance, or should they not? Should they continue CPR? Should they not? When is it time to go to comfort care? There's a lot of pressure on your loved ones in these moments. They want so much to do right by you. I have seen how much it helps people in these situations when they have two things. One, some idea what their person would want, and two, a blessing from their person in advance. Kind of an assurance for your folks that they can't do any wrong and that whatever they choose will be fine with you. Another great gift to give your family is to tell them what you want done with your body after you die and make it simple. I taught a 6-part adult RE class at my internship church on death and dying. And in the last class, we had a mortician in and we talked really granularly about disposition of remains. And I took a kind of a straw poll on what people wanted to have done with their bodies after death. I kind of had thought that cremation would be the majority vote, but I was wrong. Most of them either wanted to donate their bodies to science or to donate their bodies to law enforcement and the search and rescue teams to use to train their dogs. And those are both fine, loving, generous, really noble ideas. As long as they do the work in advance to set that up so that their family and folks are not left trying to fulfill that wish in the middle of the night and in the midst of their grief. When a person dies in my hospital system, they always call the chaplain, and I show up pretty shortly to comfort the family in any way that I can, to offer support, and also, after an appropriate time, to get their decision on who to call to take the body away from the hospital. Burial and cremation are easy choices. I have a list that I can give to people from a nonprofit with a lot of details about costs and contact information and the like. They have about 6 or 8 hours after death until the house supervisor of the hospital gets pretty antsy if there isn't a decision yet about who to call. And I feel worried for the families who are trying to carry out more exotic end-of-life wishes. If you want to be cremated, please talk to your people in advance about what you want done with your ashes. People think cremation is the end step, but there's kind of a step that comes after that. I remember when my mom died and we stumbled into the business office of a funeral home, and I thought we were just going to tell them that we wanted her to be cremated and that would be that. But then they handed me kind of the funeral home equivalent of the Sky Mail catalog. It was just like this big book of choices of things that you could do with your person's ashes. Now, fortunately, I had talked to my mom and I knew that she was happy to have her remains divided. And that's good because now she's in 2 paperweights. She's in a couple of pendants. She's got 1 large urn and 2 small urns. I actually have a little of her stashed in my glove box. She goes with me wherever I go. And that will soon be joined by my dad's medical power of attorney form. So if you get to the funeral home, though, and you're tired and you're sad, and you only then realize that there's this world of options besides a single urn, family conflicts can arise. FYI, there is no one answer about what to do with a body from a Unitarian Universalist theological perspective. So my thoughts here are purely from my practical experience in the hospital. Getting a little bit more abstract and mercifully away from thinking about your own dead body, I want to talk now about something that tops many people's lists of fears about being hospitalized during a pandemic. And that's the fear of being alone, whether that's due to quarantine precautions or due to restrictive hospital visitor policies. People I talk to, they worry most about how they or their loved one are going to make it through a hospitalization without abundant access to all the people that they love the most. Our faith offers great wisdom on this. Respect for the interdependent web of existence, of which we are all a part. Too often, I think, we interpret our 7th principle to mean simply that we need to take care of the earth. And we do, but it means more than that. It means there is something bigger than all of us linking us, each to the other. And I won't just ask you to take that on faith. I will tap our 5th source, humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. Psychologist Barbara Friedrichsen studies love and human connection at her lab at the University of North Carolina. And she offers a radical new perspective in her book, Love 2.0. Most people's notion of love and connection, what she would call Love 1.0, is that you get those things from your partner, your family, your friends, from relationships with those close to you. Dr. Friedrichsen says, yeah, sure you do, but that's only a small part of the love and connection available to you at all times. Her studies tout the value of what she calls micro connections and moments of positive resonance occurring throughout the day and happening usually with acquaintances and strangers. Your body and your brain, they thrive on those moments of positive resonance that we colloquially call love. But they can find those anywhere and from anyone. That's Love 2.0. The notion that we need our partner, family, and friends to feel loved and connected it's analogous to the notion that only red meat can satisfy our body's need for protein. Perhaps that's our preferred source, but you'll be fine without that for a while. There's lots of other places to get what you need. And hospitals are staffed with some of the most caring people on the planet. Just like you trust them to get you your medications, consider trusting them to offer you opportunity for moments of positive micro connection. Dr. Friedrichsen says, Love 2.0 is ubiquitous. It's that moment of warmth and connection that you share with another person. Many times I've seen patients become family to their floor staff. One patient got so close with her food services rep who took her meal orders over the phone that she sought him out in her wheelchair for hugs when she left the hospital. Every person that walks through your hospital room door or calls in to the hospital room is a source of emotional vitamins and minerals. We are part and parcel of an interconnected web. And one of my spiritual truths is that I am never alone. I feel hopeful that whatever brushes with mortality you have in a hospital will be filled with unexpected gifts and sacred connections. Amen. Blessed be.